All right, we're live. Chris Darrell here. I'm with Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings and RotorPros.com. Been a while since I did a NASCAR video. Got some new camera gear going, so things are working good. Today, what I'm going to do is this week we've got the Bristol Night Race, Bass Pro Shops NRA Night Race. I'm going to go over a bit of my cheat sheet. Got a lot of new customers on the two sites asking questions, so I'm going to go over how to create your own copy, how to sort columns, how to create your own models, and then I'm going to go over couple of my top picks for tonight's race on DraftKings and FanDuel. So if you have any questions, you can definitely put them in the YouTube chat or in Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings chat room there, or in the Slack chat over at rotorpros.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter after as well. And if you're someone who missed the live version of this video, you can definitely hit me up on Twitter leading up to the race. I'm going to be on pretty much all day long today. And definitely check out the video after if you're looking for special information. And in the description of this video, I'm going to kind of go over where you can kind of fast forward through to get to the picks or to get to the model, that sort of thing, just so you can kind of flip through, so you don't got to watch the whole video just to get to my picks at the end here. So stay tuned for that. With that, I'm just going to share my screen here, and I'm going to bring up my cheat sheet and then just kind of walk you through. So let's get started here. And if for some reason you can't hear me or anything like that, just let me know, and I'll get things going. But all signs are pointing to everything's working here. So we got the cheat sheet up on the screen. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you download this, either from rotorpros.com or Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings, in either of my articles or any of the chats, is you want to create your own copy, because this is a view only. You're not going to be able to sort anything. So go up to File. You're going to want to go to Make a Copy. You can name it whatever you want here. I just leave it as copy. I've already created a copy, but you would click OK. It's going to open up another copy of that. So now what you're going to be able to do, say you're a FanDuel player, it's automatically going to be DraftKings sorted by salary. So if you want to do, if you're playing on FanDuel, click anywhere in that column F there, and then just go up to Data and sort Z to A, which would be highest to lowest, and it's going to sort the salaries by FanDuel there, so you can see that. You can see the differences here. I've got everything color-coded. So then moving over, looking at track history, I've got the current track history, which is dating back to the start of the 2016 season, which is 5 races here at Bristol. We've got wins, top 5s, 10s, 20s, laps led, average start, finish, and then I've got DraftKings points for the last 3 races, which would be the 1 Bristol race this year and then the 2 last year. So you can kind of compare the scoring between the two sites. Like, for instance, Chase Elliott hasn't led a lot of laps, so he's been a much better fantasy player here at Bristol on FanDuel versus DraftKings, because he's not getting those dominator points, and he's looking at his average start, he's starting inside the top 10. So losing place differential, which is a little more important on DraftKings, makes him a little bit better of a FanDuel player. Scrolling over a little bit in a little bit lighter green, we've got career track history. Usually when I do my research, I'll go and I'll sort by wins, so that's column R here. Usually just click on the top guy and go Data Z to A, which again is highest to lowest. As you can see, Kyle Busch has got 7 career wins here. He's got back-to-back wins at the track. His brother Kurt Busch, active drivers, he's got 5, and there's a bunch of drivers here with 2. You can see again their top 5s, 10s, 20s, laps led, average starting position, and then DK and FanDuel averages over the last 6 races. And that data I'm just pulling from every race. I go to this tab here at the bottom, last 6 races at Bristol. I load all that data in here, and I've got the score in here as well. So if you want to check that out, a little more detail of each race of the last 6, you can come here and you can have a look at that data as well. That's where I pull those DK and FanDuel averages from. So up next, we've got track type history, which we've got Richmond, Bristol, and Martinsville are the 3 short tracks, each a little bit different. So I don't put a whole lot of weight into it, but short track racing is a little bit different of an animal, so you can definitely look at the the wins. This is also dating back to the start of the 2016 season, so we've got 2 full seasons and then about a little over half a season here. So we've got 15 races of short tracks going back to 16. Data there again, as you can see, Kyle Busch is dominant in that zone as well. And then we're going to go over, we've got current form in blue. That's the last 6 races overall this season. So we've got that same data up top, DraftKings scoring, FanDuel scoring over those races. A little bit further over, we've got season form, which kind of shows you the scope of the season, how everyone's doing, if you want to look at that for your research. And then at this cheat sheet comes out Monday or Tuesday, and then through the weekend practices and qualifying, I have that data updated as well. So we've got practice 1, 10-lap average, practice 2, 10-lap average, and then the average of the 1-lap averages from practice 1 and practice 2 there. And then we've got the 10-lap averages, like I said. Then we've got qualifying, and then the qualifying to practice differential. So just kind of looking at possible place differential values of guys that are maybe qualifying back in the field, but have strong practice averages there. So then over here in the orange, as you can see, this is the model that I create. I'm going to leave the practices there too because that's part of the model. So what we've got is just ranking all that data that we went over there to the left. So you've got your track history in the last, since the start of 2016 with the DraftKings and FanDuel average. We've got the career track history with DraftKings and FanDuel last 6, track type, form, and season average. And then just below it, that is all, that's the weight that I put on each of those. Now, this is where you can go in and you can adjust this model to something that you maybe like more. So if you wanted to just create a model, so you erase that, it's going to go blank, just on practice average. Say you want 50% on their practice average this week. You think starting up front is important, so you can put 20 there. You want to look at some short track averages, you can put 15 weight there. Pretty much everything you change in here, it wants to add up to 100 in this column here, or in this cell here. And then what you're going to see is your ranks change on the far right, and the far left is the same here. It just mirrors each other. Those are your overall ranks. So as you put these numbers in there, it's going to change things for sure. So I'm just going to go back to my original model that I'm kind of running this week. Been playing with it a little bit. I'm going to go back and I'm going to sort by DraftKings. So that's how you create your own model. That's how you sort any of these columns. So sometimes what I'll do once I'm done my model, I'll go and I will sort, go into the overall rank column, and I'll go up to data and sort A to Z, which would be lowest to highest. Just kind of look at the overall ranks. And then kind of pick out which guys are going to be better on DraftKings, which guys are going to be better on FanDuel, who's overpriced, who's not. As you can see, Ryan Newman's very cheap on DraftKings. He's 11th in the overall model this week. Maybe a little bit better of a play there. And then the other thing that I do once practice and qualifying is over is I will go in and I've got this targets tab here. These are some of my favorite picks. Like, for instance, my Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings article is just a preview article looking at the track, some of the track trends, looking at form, track history, that kind of stuff, who's done well here in the past, and then some pre-qualifying picks. So what I do for those customers on Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings is I'll come in here and I'll create this targets list. It's kind of like a separate article following qualifying and practices, giving you my top drivers when we're looking at dominators, place differential, value plays, and GPP plays. Shows both of their pricing, and then I put some notes over here as well, just to kind of tell you why I'm choosing that guy. So back to the cheat sheet, I'm going to talk about a few of the guys that I like here for this week. So we're going to go and we're going to have a look. Got some questions here I'm just going to check out before we head into that. So we've got Newman, Suarez, and McMurray are your value plays this week. So I love Newman. I listed him here. He's got place differential value starting 24th. He was 11th and 18th in practice. He was also 4th fastest in 10-lap average in happy hour. He's been consistent here with back-to-back top 10s and 16th or better in 8 of his last 9. So definitely like him as a value play at that price, especially on DraftKings. And then we got McMurray. Let's go check out what McMurray's been doing. He started in 20th. He did show better speed than that, 18th and 14th in practice 1 and 2, 9th and 16th in 10-lap averages. Definitely don't see him, much better. Probably that 13th to 15th would be his ceiling, but starting 20th in that mid 7K range, low 8K range on FanDuel definitely makes sense there with his track history and showing better speed than his starting position. So that makes sense as well, Ryan. And then Daniel Suarez definitely stands out. He's top 10 in my model, starting 21st. He's showing a lot better speed. He's showing top 15 with upside of top 10. So I would think anywhere in that 8 to 12 range is probably his upside. And then he's probably more like, his floor is probably like barring any crashes or anything. I mean, that happens here at Bristol. But, if he doesn't get caught up in any wrecks or anything, I think he's like a 15th to 18th car. that would be like his floor. So definitely a little more expensive than Newman, but definitely makes sense there with Suarez. And then you mentioned Matt Dibenedetto. I also listed him on my sheet. I've created a lot of lineups so far. I've started with FanDuel, and I've got Larson and Kyle Busch, like the two most expensive drivers. I'm going to sort by FanDuel pricing here for a second. Two of the top three most expensive drivers paired together, you're looking at $25,500 of your salary. You go and throw Matt Dibenedetto in there, you can almost go and choose almost any driver that you want, to create your core after that. You can go with another cheap driver and get up to, in that Denny Hamlin range, or you can go in the middle range and go with, like a Suarez, Eric Jones, Alex Bowman I mentioned as well, Ryan Newman, any of those guys. And you can, feel very comfortable with those lineups by using Matt Dibenedetto. And why I like him, he's 5,300, 5,500 there on the two sites. Starting 29th, I'd like him to start a little bit back further. What doesn't stand out here is he's 34th and 30th in practices. So that, doesn't really jump off the page. But looking at his history here at Bristol, and I went back and looked at some of his practices, and they didn't really stand out either. But he's finished 26th or better, which is better than his this week's starting position in 6 of his 7 races here in his career. So I do think, he could definitely be a 20th to 25th car upside, but even if he's only 27th, I think at the mid 5K price range, he definitely makes sense, especially if you're getting two top tier drivers, whether you're going to combine Kyle Busch and Harvick or Kyle Busch and Larson, or Larson and Harvick, two of those three together, with the upside that they're going to bring in possible laps led. Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson are definitely my top dominators this week. Going to be going with them quite a bit in my lineups and just fitting Dibenedetto in there. You don't need a whole bunch from them, but because you're going to get so much upside from those other two drivers. So yes, I definitely think that makes sense. The race was moved up a little bit, I read. I'm just going to go and check that out. I get you some more information there. If it's not, if the night race doesn't go, it'll be pushed probably till Sunday, I would imagine. I'm not sure what the forecast is there. I'm just going to kind of have a look at the forecast as well for you. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything there. We'll go look at the Bristol, Tennessee forecast while we're on here. We'll look at the hourly forecast. Yeah, I think they moved it up like a half an hour or something. I read just before coming on live here. So yeah, we got some thunderstorms. Not a whole bunch. So I mean that we're quite a few hours away from the race. So some of that could be pushed back for sure. But definitely looking like some rain in the forecast. Not a whole bunch, so I'm not too scared. So hopefully things go good for that. I'll keep you updated. Stay tuned to my Twitter. I'm going to be sharing some stuff there as well. What do you think of Chase? All right, so he's priced just below your big three and Kyle Larson on FanDuel. He's a little bit cheaper when looking at DraftKings, down in that 9K range. Starting second, he was first in the opening practice, 8th. He didn't show a lot of 10-lap average, so I don't think he's going to get those laps led. So he's a fade for me on DraftKings. I do think he could be a top 5 upside car. So FanDuel definitely makes sense because the Dominator points just aren't quite as important as they are on DraftKings. So definitely looking at him a little bit more, but he's definitely GPP. I wouldn't put him in my cash builds this week. Because I'm mainly going to try and get Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson in my cash game lineup. So that kind of eliminates a lot of those guys down here below those guys. I'm going to be looking at mid-tier and then down into the, the Dibenedetto, Alex Bowman. Okay, another question we've got, either Allmendinger or Wallace viable options. Looking at AJ Allmendinger, he hasn't been too great here, and I just don't like that he's starting 25th. He's shown some speed outside of that 25th starting spot. I would myself rather go to Darrell Wallace Jr., who started in 27th. He's raced here once. I'm just going to try and bring up, I've got another screen open here looking at how he's done here. 2 seconds. He's got one race here under his belt this spring. He started 20th and finished 16th. So he started in 27th this week. He did, while he was 29th in opening practice, he was 17th in 10 lap averages. Then things kind of flipped in the final, in happy hour there. He was 12th in practice, 24th in 10 lap averages. But all in all, I think he's a 20th to 25th place car this week, barring any wrecks or anything. I mean, you can't really predict that in the model or anything. So definitely like Darrell Wallace over Allmendinger there, a little bit cheaper. Myself, I would rather go down to, for GPP's, Trevor Bayne. He's a lot cheaper. I think he's going to command a little bit more ownership just because, one, he's a little bit cheaper. Two, he's been very good here. And the only thing that scares me is that 23rd starting position, but his 10-lap averages have been 8th and 15th. So he looks like he's got a 15th to 20th place car. And at that really low price, I think it makes a lot of sense there as well. Now, a guy we didn't talk about, I haven't talked about yet, is Alex Bowman. Just going to kind of bring his... So looking at his track history, I mean, it may be a little bit skewed because he had 4 races, 20th and 3 32nd place finishes, but he was in a lot less equipment at that time. Looking at BK Racing he started with, he was 32nd, then he jumped into the Tommy Baldwin car in 2015, and he was 20th and 32nd, but finally jumped in some good equipment here. This year in the number 88 for Hendrick Motorsports. He started 8th, so he qualified good, and he finished 5th in that race. So this year, he's number 1 when looking at that qualifying practice differential column. Starting 22nd. He showed 1 lap speed, so looks like he's got some good short run speed. Top 10, 3rd and 7th in those practices. 18th and 17th in the 10-lap average. That might be something they may be able to work on throughout the race to get him a little bit better, but I definitely think he's got upside of 10th to 15th place car, and even a top 10, I think he's got that kind of upside as well if things shake out right. But even from 10th to 15th at low 8K, low 7K range in the 2 sites there, I think Alex Bowman makes a lot of sense as well. And if a lot of people are going to be going to Stars and Scrubs and getting, like I talked about, Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson or Harvick in there, I think they're going to kind of maybe overlook that range and then kind of jump down into the Newmans and the Darrell Wallace Jr. and the Bayne and even down to Dibenedetto. So I think Alex Bowman makes a lot of sense there as well. Okay, just going to check for a few more questions on the couple of sites that I'm looking at here. Kind of went over all the drivers that I like. Look at the targets list here just for another second, see if there's anyone I missed. Kurt Busch, not a whole bunch of place differential. I think he's a good GPP play this week. Let's go look at his data. He's 10th in the overall model, 8,500 on DraftKings, 10.8 on FanDuel. Starting 9th, he's one of only 3 drivers, Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who finished top 10 in both practices as well as 10-lap averages. He has been very up and down here, so he's like either outside the top 25 or inside the top 5. He's got 5 career wins here, so there's definitely upside with him, but it seems like there's a lot of risk, so he's definitely going to be a GPP play for me, and I think with all the other plays that we talked about being possibly higher owned, Kurt Busch makes a lot of sense in GPP, I think, as well. Eric Jones, I never talked about. He was on my sheet. He's top 5, starting 14th. He's also been up and down, but not as down, when comparing him to, say, Kurt Busch, because he's got 3 races here. Just trying to bring up his... Yeah, so he started out in the 77 car last year, the 17th place finish. Not bad at his first cup run at Bristol, but then he looked dominant last year. He at this race, he led 260 laps, finished 2nd overall behind Kyle Busch. He was 26th earlier this year, so there is upside there. Starting 14th, he showed a ton of speed, 4th and 6th in practice, then 14th and 2nd in 10-lap averages. So I think he could be a little bit under-owned as well. Probably a little bit better play when looking at FanDuel at 9,200. We talked about Daniel Suarez, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., another GPP play I like this week. Got a little bit of place differential. He's been very good here. He's shown a ton of speed this weekend, but he's always a risk because he pushes things really hard. Could get in a wreck, but he's been excellent here at Bristol as well. So over the last 10 races, he's got the best average finish of all drivers in this field. His last finishes have gone 14th, 4th earlier this year, 14th and 9th last year, 2nd and 16th in 2016, 21st and 4th in 2015, and then 6th and 2nd in 2014. dating back. So definitely think he makes sense there as well. Corey Lajoie is a punt play. I do not like him starting 30th whatsoever. If he was starting 35th or back, I would probably consider Corey Lajoie this week. But starting 30th, I just don't see any way that he's going to finish inside that this week. He doesn't show a ton of speed, although looking at his history, I mean, it does stand out a little bit. He's 25th, 28th, and 24th in his 3 races here, starting 34th, 35th, and 35th. So there's a little bit place differential upside in those races, but maybe in one lineup, but I wouldn't go more than 1 or 2. If you're building 10 lineups or even 20 lineups, 1 or 2 would probably be my max on him. But again, he didn't have any 10-lap averages, 35th and 34th in practice and starting 30th. I just don't like that starting position this week. And maybe a little bit more on DraftKings just because of the pricing. It's a little bit harder to build a lineup. But on FanDuel, like I said, I build a lot of lineups with Dibenedetto, who I like a little bit better. Trevor Bayne, Darrell Walls Jr., with a combination of Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, and Kevin Harvick, 2 of those 3, putting them together and still really, really liking my lineup, getting the mid-tier guys in there. So I haven't ventured down to the Corey Lajoie range, but I haven't started building on DraftKings. So now that I think about it, probably more on DraftKings, and I think you could probably put Dibenedetto and Corey Lajoie together in some GPP lineups and go stars and scrubs if you wanted. And, they're starting 29th and 30th, so let's just say they finish 27th and 28th respectively, but Kyle Busch or Larson wins the race and you get those 2 together kind of thing, and they lead, say, 3/4 of the laps. They both lead 150 plus laps or 200, 100. They both lead, in that dominator range and finish inside the top 3, one of them winning. I think it definitely makes sense. So that takes care of it here for this week. I'm going to try and do these videos a little bit more on race days. If you have any questions, like I said, you can jump over to the Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings chat room or over to the rotorpros.com Slack chat. Hit me up. I'll be around there all day, as well as you can jump onto my Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9 and hit me up with any questions there about the cheat sheet, any drivers that you're wondering, any lineup build strategy, anything like that. So with that said, thanks for checking out the video. And if you have any suggestions, things that I maybe didn't mention, hit me up. Let's see some green screens today, everybody. Cheers.